goes somewhere in there, but I'm just happy to say, hello, Mayor Olivia, hello. Sounds so good. Anyway, I have a complaint to make before I begin, and that complaint is to Dina, because in this sanctuary there is an instrument of Satan. There should never be in a church sanctuary a clock. Now, for 40 years, I worked as hard as I could to ignore that. And Dina, I'll try my best. But I'm trying to squeeze 50 years of MCC Toronto into a 12-minute sermon. So I will do my best. The Bible is a collection of stories. The people of Israel, the Jewish community, have a history of sharing stories. And Dina asked me to share some stories from the last 50 years. So today is part one of a two-part series that we're doing together. I'm to talk about the past, and next Sunday on the 50th anniversary of this church, Reverend Dina Dudley will talk about the present and the future. So it's really exciting, Dina. Thank you for the opportunity to share this sermon series with you. But I want to go back just a little past 50 years first. In 1968, the Reverend Troy Perry founded this denomination, and he did it on three pillars: spirituality, community, and social justice. So all MCCs together are supposed to operate on those three pillars. Today I want to add to that the three scriptures. The scriptures that talk about where Jesus said, "Other sheep have I, who are not of this fold." The importance of MCCs always remembering to reach beyond the walls, to reach out, to welcome others in. Jesus also said, "I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly." Life is an amazing, amazing gift. And yes, some really crappy things will happen in life. But we still have the opportunity to experience the abundant gift, the wonderful gift that life is. And part of the job of MCC is to proclaim that message, in particular to the LGBT community. And finally, as the people were coming to Jesus and he saw the crowds coming, he said, "The harvest is plentiful, but we need more laborers in the field," reminding us that all of us are called to participate in this ministry. All of us are called to serve the world, to make it a better place than the world we inherited. Make it a better place for those who will come after us. 1973, the Reverend Bob Wolf was asked by Troy Perry to come to Toronto. That people had written a letter with a little petition that had been circulated in the bars inviting MCC to this city. So Bob was given a one-way ticket, no salary. He was to fly at the airport. He would be met by three people, and the rest was up to him to start with that very tiny group to begin to build Metropolitan Community Church. There are no guarantees when we serve. We don't serve because of a reward. We serve because we're called, and see what happens. And so a few days later, on July the 17th, the first worship service was held over a bar, a little office. The bar was on Yonge Street. It was 511 Yonge. It was a tough, rough street kind of bar where LGBT people joined together. And it was very difficult at first for Bob and that small group to begin to gather people around. Holy Trinity, wonderful Holy Trinity Church at the Eden Center, welcomed in MCC, let them worship upstairs in the chapel. And then a young man climbed on the roof of the new City Hall, and he was going to commit suicide. And he asked to see the minister of this new church. And so Bob Wolf, with his bad leg, went up on the roof of the City Hall and talked that young man down. The Toronto Star covered it, but that wasn't the big news. Later on, the city would give a certificate to Reverend Wolf for his courage. And he used that opportunity to challenge the politicians to make the world a better place. He said, "You end suicide not on the roof of City Hall, but here in the chambers of City Hall by the works that you do." And then the church took off and began to grow. A few years later, in 1976, Bob and his partner Larry Gower left to start a church in Vancouver. The Reverend David Gunton filled in the interim. And the second senior pastor was called the Reverend John Ayers. And it didn't go so well. He arrived to preach his first sermon on Palm Sunday, and that night, someone sleeping in an adjacent building started a fire, burned down the buildings around, burned the roof off the church, and all of a sudden, MCC had no place to worship after his very first Sunday. And it went downhill from there. It wasn't a good match. So I was asked to fill in while they searched for a new senior pastor. I was elected senior pastor, and we were worshiping in the chat hall. It was a hall organized as a drop-in for the LGBT community. It had a counseling bureau for the LGBT community organized by George Hislop, a name that some of you will remember. So we would go in on Sunday evenings, and we would wash the beer off of the tables. We would take the ashtrays and clean them out and get the smell out the door, and then we would have church. I couldn't wait to get us out of there. So the Unitarians on Avenue Road in St. Clair welcomed us in, as they have many MCCs throughout North America. The Unitarians do not call themselves a Christian church, but throughout our history, they have welcomed MCC in time and time again when nobody else would. In 1978, Anita Bryant came to Toronto on her crusade to undo any rights that we had won. We had won very few rights, but the city of Toronto had given a number of rights to the community, and so she came here to try to overturn that. And in response, we held a national worship service that all the major stations covered it. For the first time on TV, LGBT people and our allies together worshiping. Now, 2 days ago, John said to me, "Brent, did you hear this new story?" And I said, "What's the new story?" He said, "Anita Bryant's granddaughter has just got married, and she's married a woman." Shortly after that, we had a pride parade, and MCC Toronto had the very first float ever in a pride parade. And it was a little wagon that was decorated, and along the way, one of the wheels broke, and so they had to carry it the rest of the way. First float. We then moved to Bathurst Street United Church, where we were able to combine our offices, our drop-in center, everything in one place. And one Sunday, we got a bomb threat. One of the ushers came up to me and said there had been a bomb threat. And I said, "Okay, everyone, look under your chairs. Does anyone find anything mysterious there?" Okay, we're going to continue with our worship service. We will not let negativity win the day. We bought our first church, 2029 Girard Street, and almost immediately, AIDS hit our congregation and our city. And at one point, we were caring for 90 people in their homes. This congregation. And that was led by two people who coordinated it all. The Reverend Evan LeBlanc and our own Sandra Miller. Throughout our history, whenever there has been a need, MCC Toronto has stepped up to fulfill that need. We were responsible, along with John Campy, for giving the Triangle program a home, a place where they could be able to learn and grow together and in a safe place. Then came the idea of having a worship service at Roy Thompson Hall. I presented it to the board of directors, and they said no. So I had a year to work on it. And a couple of guys came forward and gave us the money to have it, and we began to have our Christmas Eve services there for many, many years. Church on Church Street, an opportunity to take our church out when possible as much to the community. And one of those times when we were worshiping in Maple Leaf Gardens, there was a bomb threat. There was a threat that was sent to us that the letter said, if you have your worship service at Maple Leaf Gardens, blood will flow. And the police took it very seriously. And we thought we had to inform the community if there was a danger to decide whether they would come or not. And I remember walking down to Maple Leaf Gardens that morning and seeing the protesters outside. And walking inside, and we didn't know if anybody would show up. And when they opened the doors, people poured in. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came to worship with us and to stand tall. Then we purchased this building, 115 Simpson Avenue. The first legal same-sex weddings held here on that spot. There have been many times down through the years when it looked like Brent has done something big. But behind all of those decisions, there was a board of directors saying yes or no. And when the wedding things came up, they unanimously said, yes, let's go for it. We had no idea what we were getting into. The church has continued in this place to serve our community. Weddings and funerals, led by Jeff and Dina and June. But earlier on, our nation was called to mourn. And Jack and Olivia reached out to MCC. And so the choir that day were unbelievable, how they helped the nation to grieve and to heal. And Olivia and Jack gave our church an amazing gift, the opportunity to mourn and to heal. So for 50 years, we've been at it. And still, Jesus says to us, I have come that you might have life and you might have it more abundantly. Week after week, in this place and from this place, that message of God's unconditional love, that message of the gift of life is proclaimed. Other sheep have I, who are not of this fold, the message to reach beyond these walls and indeed around the world to welcome people. Yes, we're experiencing probably the worst backlash that we've ever had, with rights that we've won threatened to be taken away. Particularly the drag community and the trans community are the targets. And once again, MCC is called to stand up and to be the human rights church. That was a little bit of the past. Next week, Dina will talk to you about today and tomorrow. It's been an amazing 50 years. And you're just getting started. Thank you.